23rd, 1987.
Yeah, right on. 1987.
I dropped it.
And here we are.
It happens to be what? It happens to be on a Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning before Thanksgiving.
And we're at Kathy's house.
Yes, and Auntie Helen is here from
drinking juice.
Drinking juice
Yes.
from California. Are you going to come over and join us now? You're not going to join us at all? Okay. So, let us begin.
We could talk.
You're on.
Yeah.
We could say a lot of things if we knew that the machinery wasn't on.
Let's pretend it's not on.
We were talking in the. Let's start with what year you. Auntie Helen is 93. We'll start with Auntie Helen.
Yes.
And Grandma is 85, correct?
No.
80 what?
85 and a half.
85 and a half. So 93, 7 back from 100, and this is 87. So that would be what?
18 something.
1894 is when you were born, right?
1894.
1894 and
18th of August.
18th of August, 1894. And you were what? Which child were you in order?
Oh, which? I don't even remember.
You don't remember?
You know, I would be about fifth.
Fifth in order.
From the top.
Fifth from the top.
Yeah.
And Grandma, you were born on
May 17, 1902.
May 17, 1902, so that would be 8 years later, and you were second from the
I'm
last.
the baby, yes.
And how many children were there altogether?
Well, there were a bunch. There was a bunch, a big bunch. There was 7 girls and 3 boys.
7 girls.
And then there was 5 stepdaughters, stepsisters of us.
There were 2 mothers.
There were 2 mothers. My mother was the second mother. The
And
first
Auntie
mother.
Helen, you had the same mother.
I am on the same front. We have the same mother.
You have the same mother.
Absolutely.
And the same
Did you
father,
say
And the
too.
same father.
And the same father.
Yes.
Absolutely. And there were 4. Let's see. Yeah,
5.
older than I. 4 older than I.
4 older than you, and their names.
Cecilia was the oldest one.
Uh-huh.
And then was Julia.
Auntie Julia.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then was Lawrence.
Uh-huh.
And then was John. We called him Johnny.
Uh-huh.
Then was you.
And then was I. And then Mike.
Uncle Mike.
Michael.
Yeah, I know.
And
Clara.
then there was Clara.
Uh-huh.
And Amelia. And Johanna. And Theodosia.
Wow, good to tell you.
She was the baby of my mother's.
That's just not the stepsisters.
Mm-hmm.
The stepsisters are old, and the stepchildren are
The
older than
half-sisters were
older.
older.
They came first.
Yeah. Our father was married first, and his first wife died, and they had 5 children, 5 girls. And that was it from the first marriage. And he married our mother. She was just a young girl from Europe. And she had all of these, then they had all
Well,
of
how did your
us.
mother get to know your father? Since he came to America.
That I know how.
You know that.
Oh yes. She came to America with another couple.
And what was her name?
Her name was Marciana. Marciana Brolzinski. And she was 18 years old. And she came with those people, with other couple, and she got herself a job with German people by Minto, North Dakota. I don't know how she came to be in Minto. I knew the people that she came with, and that's all I know.
Were they Altendorf? Or
Huh?
Were they Altendorf?
No, they were not. They were different people. Krishko, Krzyżka. They were Polish people, Krzyżkas. And I remember the man had bright red hair, curly, and I thought he had horns.
Their child
I was just little, And I thought he had horns, but they were his hair curling like that, you know. But we kids were always afraid of those people because they lived in the woods.
Well,
by the
she's
road.
come in. They came through, but their child could not go through. That's how mother took place of their child.
Their
The
daughter.
boat.
She
Because
couldn't
their
go
child
through
got
because
some disease, and
no,
she couldn't
she was pregnant.
come. Oh, something happened.
Yeah,
to her.
she was
couldn't be
pregnant,
on a
and they
boat.
wouldn't take her on a boat.
And
So
so your
mother
mother took her place.
So
She came
she
across
took
by
her
herself.
Yes,
And then she was working by Minto out there.
for Kimstead's. No?
For the people by the name of Kimstead. And our uncle Julius Reski lived just a little ways from us. He went to Kimstead's to get some grain, some wheat, to seed in the spring. And he saw this girl, and
He liked her.
he thought that she was a nice girl. She was from Europe and knew one, and there was John Reski, his cousin, and he was a widower, and he needed a housekeeper, a wife.
Someone to watch over the 5
So
children.
he had 5 children.
Right.
So, all right, he came back home, and he tells this guy here that there's a nice girl, and she would make a good wife for him. So our father goes for the next load of wheat, and he meets this girl out there, you know. And all right, they got a talking, and she would like to see his property. So next
wasn't
week
so dumb,
for
was she?
Sunday, he hitch up his horses, and he goes and brings the girl to the farm, to his farm. And she thought, well, this is a nice home, it's a good start, and okay.
How old was he? Your father?
My father was 42,
42, and she was 18.
and my mother was, by that time, she was 21.
Oh, she was 21. Okay.
And they got married in 3 weeks.
It was fast.
And she
romance.
moved over there, and there it was. That's how it came that there happened to be, we happened to be there.
Yes.
So everybody grew up to be quite happy people.
Okay. So you were born in 1894,
That's
and
right.
Grandma was born in 1902. Okay.
Right.
So by the time Grandma was born, you were already 8 years old.
Right.
Right. So were you in school already? Did you
I
go to
don't
school?
know anything about it.
Do you remember?
That I wouldn't. I know that my half sisters were already married, because one of them had children older than I, a year older. They were older than Johnny, my brother. And the other one had the oldest boy. His name was August, and he was just as old as I.
So
And
then you
we
had
kind of
nephews older than you.
Yes, I had.
And you had nephews
Yes,
older
and
than you.
we grew up very close.
Everybody was
family.
older than I never knew young people. All I knew was old people.
Only Auntie
And
Teddy.
in my days, everybody the youngers had to take orders from the olders.
There
Whatever
were a lot of
they
olders.
said, the pair, you didn't say, I'll ask Manu. You asked whoever was by you, because they were all old, and you were the only young one there.
Like, I had to take care of my younger 4 sisters. I took care of them.
Took care of Clara.
I took care
Amelia.
of Clara, Amelia, Jane, and Teddy. And because Julia and Celia already had bigger duties. And so I took
They
look
had to
after
watch
those.
and milk
I
the
was sort
cows.
of a babysitter
You
for
were,
the
yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to school because I had to take care of younger kids.
So you didn't go to school.
I didn't go to school till I did go to sign up, and I was in 2nd grade for at least 4 or 5 years.
You were in 2nd grade.
I don't know, in 2nd grade.
They didn't bother.
And there's where
It was no use.
there's where I stopped not going to school. When I
Second
was
grade.
11 years old, I was still in second grade because I didn't go to school. You know, they didn't send me. They send you one day a week maybe, and then you had the kids to look after.
Your duties.
See, so you couldn't go, and that was it. But until later on, going to school was compulsory. They just had to, or they were fined. But that was when those kids were going to school already. Well, I was already growing up at 11.
Well, how far away was the school?
Me?
3
Yeah.
miles.
Second grade.
How far away was it?
5 miles. 3.5.
3.5 sounds good.
3.5. We had to walk.
You had to walk. Right.
They did too.
We did.
And I used to get up during winter. The kids wanted to go to school. The parents didn't want to send them. They said they're just tearing out their shoes, and they didn't have any use for education. So I used to get up in the dark and got their kids' lunch ready and shoved them to school, and they went.
No, they didn't go so easy. Mike went with us, and he was
Mike
carrying sort of a lunch bucket, they called it. It was a gallon pail from syrup. And Ma would put some bread with white grease from the thawed out from pork. And she threw a little bit of salt on some of it. Sometimes we got sugar sprinkled on that
But
white
that was
grease.
treat.
And that was a treat. So when we got close, Mike always made Ted and I carry his bucket because he was too doggone lazy to do it. So when we got halfway to school, he'd open the bucket for carrying for being nice to us, that he didn't hit us. Then he'd take a piece of our bites from our lunch. That bugger was always hungry. We could never feed him good. And if we didn't give him the bite from our sandwich of that bread and that white grease, God, no wonder I got troubles today. All of these years of eating that pork grease.
I think it was kind of good. It kept me going all the time.
Was this a church school that you went to?
No,
Or
it was
it was a public school?
public school.
Public school,
One,
of
two,
course.
three. 1, 2, 3 was the 123 was the number on the school.
School 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. But it had everything in
Now,
it.
it was compulsory for you to go to school. You had to go to school
No, we did.
when you
because
were
Yes, they
7
did.
or 6
Yes,
or
they
something.
did.
starting
They did.
at 6.
Yeah.
We went 6.
Yeah, they.
Okay, then that would mean
They
you were
had-
14 by this time. What were you
Oh.
doing when she was in
I
going to
was working
school?
out.
You were working
I was
out?
already hired to work out. I had to.
Were you living at home still?
Oh yes, but I did housework for people, and my mother would say somebody needed me
Babysit.
and needed help, and we had to go and help out other people.
Then you would come home at night.
No, we never did. No,
Oh, you
we'd see
stayed.
each other maybe at church next Sunday or on Sunday. We used to go to church on Sunday.
That's the only place where you'd meet people that were people besides horses and cows and cattle
And by that,
fish.
and at that time, I couldn't speak a word of English.
You all spoke Polish.
Everybody in that community spoke Polish only.
kind of
This is
broken
Minto.
Polish. No,
That's-
Warsaw community.
Warsaw.
It's
right?
Warsaw.
community.
Okay.
Minto was English.
Yeah, it
place.
was more of a
There were
city,
Scotch
and
and
people had
Irish.
to speak English in Minto.
That's right. There was a Scotch and Irish and German and mixture like that. And those Polish that had business, they already learned to speak English. But we never saw other people speaking different language. And we went to school, we didn't know what we were saying. Because we didn't understand, we couldn't learn. I learned to read and write, but I just wrote what was in the book.
In the church,
Because we
the
couldn't.
priest spoke Polish.
Everybody.
Emilia, first time she came to school, the teacher held up her hand and she says, Emilia, what is this? And she showed her ring, you know.
Mhm.
And Emilia says, pierścień. Pierścień? She says, no, that isn't. Think, what is this? Pierścień. She knew.
But she didn't
She
know
says,
that it
sit
was
down,
a ring.
that's a ring. Emilia says, that can't be a ring. How
Ring,
can
we
that
never
be a
learned
ring?
that.
And your mother spoke English?
My mother spoke English, German, and
She
part
didn't
Wait,
English.
we have a disagreement here.
What?
She didn't speak
Well,
English?
she said a few words. She understood
She understood.
because
Yes,
she
but,
worked for those people
but she got her German mixed
with Polish.
with Polish, and that's the language she used.
But wherever she went to
She
school,
used mostly German.
That's right, and they didn't need to. You didn't need English in that community because the stores were. There were clerks that were Polish, and they spoke Polish or German. So the parents used that language.
So you could live your whole life there and never learn English.
true.
In the middle
Until
of North
I
Dakota.
was about
You could.
between 14 and 16. Then we met different young people that spoke English, and we wanted to learn that language. And we just talked among us, just together at home.
But Dad
And,
wouldn't allow it. Even
and
at
we-
the table, you weren't allowed to
No.
speak
But you
English.
must have been speaking English in school. In school, rather.
We
right?
didn't need
Grandma's
to-
speaking English in school. While you were working. You were working for Polish people,
That's right.
but Grandma was going to school.
That's right.
And were you learning English in school?
Of course, we spoke English in school at those times. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So then, when you would come home, you couldn't speak English at home.
No,
We were not
no,
allowed,
We're
our
not
parents
allowed to
wouldn't.
speak English at home. Dad
No.
would say, "We don't want no Jewish people in our house.
Jewish people.
No Jewish people are allowed in my house."
Uh-huh.
And so we all had to speak Polish, and we never ate one at a time. We all had to wait till the last one came in and sat down. We all had to
Everybody
eat
sat.
Really?
together.
You had to
Never
wait.
We
sat.
had to wait till everyone was there, and then
And-
we sat down and
Yeah.
ate together. No Jews allowed.
And if anybody was late, that person went without dinner.
Are we talking about dinner now? Yeah.
We're talking about dinner, supper,
What did
whichever.
you usually eat for dinner?
What do we usually eat for dinner? We ate different. We ate good stuff.
We had good food.
Did you grow your own
Lots.
food?
Yes.
We ate.
We had plenty of meat, plenty of potatoes, plenty of vegetables, sauerkraut,
Lots of fish.
always.
Lots of
And
fish.
we had all kinds of
They were
fish.
free.
And
From which?
and we drank coffee all the time, and we had buckets of milk. Nobody liked milk. There was too much of it.
Ma always gave us the good milk. After she put it through a cream separator, you could see Canada through it. It was so thin. They skimmed milk. We got it skimmed.
And you made your own butter? Did you make your own butter?
We
We
made
did.
our own butter
Did the
by
children do
twisting
that?
a handle.
Yes, we did.
Everybody
By
could
hand.
Was that like duties you had to do? Like Amelia do the butter and Jane take the cow out and
No,
Yes.
not
Is
the
that-
cow. We had about 100 pieces, and there was
That-
2 of us had to herd cattle,
oh,
and we hated them. We
Did you have a
hated
dog?
everyone. Pardon?
a dog to help you with the cows?
We had 2 dogs, but they were dumb.
Dumb dogs. Uh-huh.
Just the collie dogs, but they weren't trained dogs.
They weren't trained dogs to bring
No,
the cows in.
no, they'd chase them all around if you'd let them.
Mhm.
But
So you had to go out and bring the cows in yourself?
yes,
The kids did?
we
The
hated
children
it.
did?
Oh, we hated it.
You hated it.
There's
It was cold.
Yeah, there was times when the cows had the little calves on one side of the river, and we lived on the other side. And then the bigger kids would have to go in a boat and put that calf on that boat and haul it across. The one that was rowing had to do a very fast job and do it good, because none of us knew how
What
to
was the
swim
name
good.
of the river?
Red River, I guess it was just a branch.
It was a
That
forest.
went into
It
the
was
lake.
the forest river.
It's a forest
name.
river?
The forest
Well,
river.
they had
yeah.
a name for it. I never knew. I just saw that it was a stream.
As far
Used to
as
swim in
you
it?
got to the sun.
We waded in it, but none of us knew how to swim.
Did your farm run right up to the
The
river?
boys
It
did.
separated, went through the land
Across
all
the
the way
river.
through to the lake,
Uh-huh.
and we'd go and that all of the ducks would be on the river and the geese, and in the evenings we had to go and get them ducks home by throwing dirt.
Chase them. You had to chase
them.
Yeah, but why would you chase the ducks?
Because the mink
had to
would
come
get them
home.
for the night. The mink would get
Yes,
them.
they
They would catch them
Yeah,
They'd kill them.
and to eat them.
yeah.
And you would eat duck
Yeah.
ternina.
Yeah, they would.
No, we
they
wouldn't eat them after they were killed like that. They had to be done professionally.
Oh.
For ternina, you had to catch them
Uh-huh.
and get the blood out of them.
Uh-huh.
And those that you kill with a stone or something hard that would hit them to splash
And you
the
know,
water.
in those days, she already remembers. She doesn't remember the first house that we had lived in. She remembers the better. Our parents bought another farm and built a new home.
How far away was the new farm?
3.5 miles, then 4 miles.
Did you ever see
from
the old house, Grandma?
We used to
Did you go
keep-
visit it?
I was deadly afraid of it because
We
I
had
felt
it.
it was haunted. My father used to tell
There
stories
were
about
rats there.
In the
father
new house or
used
the
to-
old house?
The old house.
The old house was
Because
full
nobody
of
lived in it.
Uh-huh.
And later on, you know, things changed more than they do now, even. And you know, the times are changing. You got everything different. It's unbelievable what things have happened.
Oh, sure.
Now,
Now this first...
after we
okay.
got, now in the old place, there was no telephone, no radio, nothing
The first
like
house.
that. Nothing. The
Second
only,
house too.
the only
Yeah.
way you got acquainted with people was to meet them,
by church.
you know. And you go to church, and those were the only people that you knew that went to the same who lived in the same community. Now later on, there came a telephone in the new place. Now that's what she remembers.
Oh, well, when you were a child, there was no telephone, was
No,
there?
there wasn't.
Nobody had cars,
But
did
we
they?
had
No, there was
voices.
they didn't
we
make them.
all could yell.
They didn't make cars. Cars weren't made at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And then
Well, cars
then-
were made but they were just in big cities. They were
My
just
father
one-
bought the biggest car he could find to get his brood in it, and that was big case, and it had to have side seats for the youngest one.
seven passenger
So-
case.
Yeah.
Well, wait, let's go back to the old house. How big was your old house?
Oh boy.
The old house there was a big kitchen,
And
it
this
was
is-
bigger than this room.
Kitchen?
Bigger.
Yeah.
It was a log one.
Mhm.
And covered up with siding on the outside, but it was bigger than this room. And then there was a great big, still bigger living room, which was used for the master bedroom. And there was one bedroom for all the children. We
Okay.
had beds set up.
Like in hospital.
Yeah.
Like a ward.
And for summer, there was just an attic on the house. And for summer, the girls put beds upstairs because it was cool, you know. For winter, it was too cold.
Well, you had one...
And there's
one-
where we
The first
slept.
house or the second?
The first house, you had like a furnace or
No
not
furnace.
a furnace, but
When
a...
you went to
Honey,
sleep,
we
you
had
had
a
lots of
stove.
ice around
We
your
had a
face.
box stove.
It was
Box
terribly
stove.
cold.
Box stove like that.
In the first
And
house.
there's a pipe going out.
Okay.
And there's a chimney, goes into the chimney. This is the thing. That's what we have to heat up the whole house in. And in the kitchen we had a range, which everything, it wasn't one of the nice ranges either. It was on 4 legs kind of a thing, cast iron,
And you would put wood in it.
absolutely.
Yeah. cook off
where
of that.
there wasn't even any coal in that part of the country.
So all you
There
needed
was
was
just wood,
Right.
but there was lots
So
of
the boys
wood,
would
lots
chop
of
wood?
timber.
No, the boys wouldn't, the girls would.
Well, what did the boys do?
And the boys looked pretty.
They-
Oh
well,
no, she's kidding you. She's
well, what did they do?
Not much.
no. My
Lawrence
father did.
Lawrence used to come home from his parties and he'd sing on top of his voice. I never
Oh,
met.
that's when he was growing up.
Yeah,
But let's say that
that's
he
what the
was,
boys were doing.
Yeah.
when Lawrence was about 16 years old, he was growing up.
Mhm.
He was big. He was bigger than you are today.
About 7
Because
feet,
he
I
was-
think.
He was
Why?
He was big.
7 feet tall.
Yeah.
He
he's
was
very
tall. And he was strong. And he and Dad went to, and they cut down the trees and brought it, and they didn't have electric
Yeah.
saws like we have now.
Right.
You know where you press the button and the chainsaw goes.
Right.
There was no chainsaw.
These
There was
axes
this
or-
muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we girls.
But I think Dad mostly supervised. It was Ma who did most of the sawing, and Ma who did most of the supervising too.
Well, he
Yeah,
was
she
getting
did.
old too, wasn't he?
He was.
He was.
I never
He was.
remember him with a hair on his head.
Uh-huh.
He was. I often wondered how he'd look in it with a toupee, because everybody else's father had hair. My father never had no hair.
Did you have pictures of him when he was younger?
No.
Sure.
You did.
Where?
The family picture. That's the
Oh,
one.
he wasn't younger. He was
Oh,
old.
well, listen,
Pictures
honey,
before
that
that?
was
No,
not.
no,
that
no,
was as old as young. They didn't have anything from Europe,
They didn't bring any. They didn't have any pictures.
and
of
he
him.
was already pretty old when we
Yeah.
remember. I don't remember our father younger.
Right. He was almost
He was-
almost 50
He
when you
had
were
a
born.
beard and curly one
Right.
and bald on top, and that's how I remember our dad.
Well, I don't remember him. Only whenever he took a walk, he'd go down the road, and some girl would be walking down the road, going like from the farm home to Minto, and he'd join her. He'd come home. His stomach was not feeling good. Ma would say, "What's wrong? You're getting a heart attack?" And he'd say, "No, that girl had so much perfume on, and she made me sick." And he'd come home saying how sick she made him, because in those farms there was only wind and flowers that we're used to, not perfume.
Right.
And if somebody had loads of perfume,
you
he couldn't
didn't.
take
But
it.
didn't the men smoke? Didn't they smoke?
Yes,
No,
they did.
chewed tobacco.
They
Not
chewed
our
tobacco?
dad.
My dad
Your
did.
father smoked?
No, he
No.
only
He
did
did.
like that with snuff.
He snuffed.
He did like with snuff.
Uh-huh.
He used to smoke one of those corn cob
I
pipes.
don't remember that. Not in my life.
I did because I even stuck,
He already couldn't pull
I stuck soap in it and I got beat up for it.
You put soap in your dad's pipe, and he got angry with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the pipes were made out of
corn cob.
corn cobs.
Yeah, sure, corn cob. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He
I
used to
don't think
smoke
he never
that.
smoked.
Did the boys smoke when they were older?
No, they didn't smoke,
They
but
chewed
they
tobacco.
used.
The chew tobacco.
Sure.
They used
So
to,
they.
what was
so
it?
they
Yankee
sure-
Girl they used to chew. The Yankee Girl they liked because they gave me some too.
The Yankee Girl? What's the Yankee Girl?
Yankee Girl is a cut plug,
Tobacco.
and you buy it.
That
and
was
it's sweet.
tobacco.
Mike said, "You take a bite, Jane. You
Okay.
love it." And I took it chew, and I chewed, but I threw up so good.
So did
Well, it
I.
doesn't taste good, does
We
it?
had to learn those things.
They'd have to spit it out.
We had
man.
to try.
Did they have spittoons in their house?
Cuspidors,
Did
yeah.
you have them in your house?
Big
Yeah.
ones. They didn't
Who cleaned
always
them?
try.
Everybody had them.
Who cleaned them?
And it
Women, of
ladies-
course.
Women cleaned them.
Oh,
And the men
of
spit in there.
And they kind of go from here to there, but they'd always miss.
They would miss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
But
would miss.
you had to use the brush to wash the floor.
And if you walked in the way, you'd get hit, eh?
You would.
Uh-huh. Everybody had. They didn't have cuspidors in the church, did they?
They
Oh,
didn't
no,
chew
they
in a church.
Oh, you didn't
They
chew
were
in a church.
respectable.
Okay.
No,
But they used snuff in their nose in church. I've seen it done.
Oh,
my
really?
father did.
Yeah, he did.
He made
You kind of
his.
sneak or
He
something?
made his
Sure.
own cups, and he'd make them out of the cow's horn, and he'd polish them good, and they looks pretty. The little boxes like so, and he'd take some of that, and then he'd pass his neighbor his beautiful box, and the neighbor would take a snuff, and while the priest was talking so fast, and he had
Sure,
so
they
much-
did before the priest came in.
Yeah, he could do it.
You know, because after the priest got into the church, they didn't smoke. Didn't.
So you all went to church on Sunday morning
Yeah, but we only
For
went to
10:30
confessions like.
for 10:30 mass.
We went
Yeah.
to confessions once a year because we had to go
Twice.
for Christmas.
For Easter
But-
and for Christmas.
But for Easter we had
Twice.
to go
Mhm.
because they wouldn't give us. We had to pay for the seats. Seats had to be rented. How many people there
Or
was
just for Christmas and Easter.
for Easter?
They
the-
sold the seats in the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we went to confession, the priest would be sitting there behind
And
the
you had to
curtain.
come with a card, give them a card first
Yeah, but
before
when
you
you
go
give-
in.
You
Otherwise,
didn't just walk
keep
up
up.
to him. You had to kneel in the line that was lined up, sometimes across the whole church, and you went on your knees, clunk, clunk, till you get over to that
What?
boot.
You had a kneel,
Yeah,
walk on your knees to
from
the,
the doors to the where
the
the
men
priest
and the
was
women?
sitting. Yes,
everybody,
you
children
crawled.
and all.
And
Right.
then when you got over there, you told them all the bad stuff.
Oh,
and
this
the
was
good
confession.
stuff. Yes.
Yes.
And when you were through, you hand them the card.
You went one at a time.
One at a time, then you hand him the card, and he'd stick out his hand, and he had a stole, and you had to kiss it. All right.
You had to kiss his stall.
Yes,
But
you
you
did.
know, women didn't wear lipstick at the time, so they didn't
Boy,
smear it up.
Uh-huh.
You had to kiss the
So it
stole.
was okay.
And then you had to, sometimes it took hours to get through that
To the
line.
confession.
If you, sometimes,
Because the whole parish went.
if you didn't
Just
do
all at
good,
one time.
Twice a year.
Yeah.
the priest would say, how many, you say you did something bad, he'd say, how many times? Well, God, you missed church, how many times?
Uh-huh.
Well, God forbid you start counting, and by that time he'd say, you ox, you don't know nothing. And here, you got whole line of people listening
he's
to
yelling
him,
at you.
yelling at
Yeah.
me, and I have to go through this.
How old were you?
How old?
Yeah.
I was from a
8?
no, I wasn't
No,
even
no.
8. I was about 7 when
Uh-huh.
I made mine. They didn't expect me to live,
Was
but
your-
I fooled them.
Uh-huh. You were
Wait
sickly?
a minute.
Very sickly, yes.
Mhm.
I had a leaking appendicitis, which I was born with, and they couldn't find out why I was vomiting all the
Do
time.
you remember this, Auntie Helen? Do you remember her being sick?
I was sick all the time.
Or is she just one of the younger bunch?
She used to have headaches, but nobody paid much attention
They thought she was putting
to
on an act.
that.
To get out of work.
When she got up in the morning and got there for breakfast, then she was okay, you know. And
Ah.
those that weren't counted there, well, then you look, where are they?
Grandma, the story is changing here on you.
Yeah, they're changing me all around, but you know what?
You
I
remember.
fooled them. You know, I really did fool them because mother came over, and when I was about 7, I would say, my mother says, ask the priest if he'd take me with the next year's class, because she didn't expect I would make it for the next.
But she was tough. She lived through the whole works, you know, because we all had the flu. She didn't.
No, I
And
was on
she
my
and
side.
Clara didn't have it.
Flu
it wasn't nice.
was more serious
And we
then than it
didn't-
is now?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
That was bad. That was bad because there was a funeral sometime during the big flu.
Yeah.
There was, if you ever hear about that, there was a funeral once every day, or sometime 2 or 3 every day. You just didn't know. People
People were
died.
worried about catching the flu.
They didn't even go to a funeral because they were afraid to catch it.
They didn't go to church?
No, well, they buried the people.
Okay.
Somebody did do it. But we lived through. All of us lived through all right.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't so bad. We all got through. She never got sick.
You never caught the flu?
Never, no. And she and Clara were doing all the work around the farm, feeding horses
And we
and the
had
cows
to
and
go
doing
and feed the
everything.
neighbors too.
And we were just
you and
laid
Claire
up
had
like
to
a
do all the work.
hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just terrible.
While
we
everybody
had-
else was sick.
yeah, we had to
Including
go.
your father?
Father wasn't feeling well, but he didn't even do much. But
He was too
we
old
had to
already.
go to the neighbors.
This is already about, you're in the second house already.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Well,
were.
what was the difference between the first house and the second house? It was 3 miles away.
Not 3, it was further.
Oh, it was further?
Yeah, it was 3 miles to the school, and
Yeah,
the
and this
other
was
place
three-
was about 3
about
miles
5
too.
miles if you went along the road.
Yeah.
It was a bigger farm?
No, they both were 160 or some acres. He had a section altogether.
Half a section, that's, how much is 2 times
350 acres, I'd say.
160 is 1/4. And there was 2 of them
Yeah,
there
lots of land.
and another 2 there.
But it was a bigger
4
house,
quart-
then he moved to a
that was
bigger
a
house, right?
section.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't say it was such a bigger, but it was newer.
Were there rats?
And there was,
Rats?
in the new place,
Yeah.
There were
But
too
there were
many
rats in
kids.
the old house, eh?
no, we chased them.
chased them
Oh,
all
yes,
away.
we had big upstairs and
Uh-huh.
the
Out in the
girls
barn?
had their own rooms and
Oh, yeah,
the
it's a new
boys had
house.
their own room.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you had a bigger,
it was
did you have a
big.
bigger stove?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Bigger
yeah.
stove.
Yeah, to keep the house warm?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
There
And
was
we
no
were all
heat
grown up
upstairs.
by that time. We were all quite grown up. I was 11 years old when they moved into.
Do you remember moving?
Oh, yes.
That would be
definitely,
1905. I mean, that means Grandma would have been 3.
definitely. Yeah,
I don't remember.
You don't remember it?
1905.
I remember.
Right.
Yes, that's the time I learned the numbers on calendar.
You were in
Can
school then.
imagine?
Yeah.
I
You were in school
remember
then.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and so things just went on, one thing after another, and we they improved an awful lot after that. But the last, let's say, last 50 years, it's unbelievable to think that a man went to the moon and everything. It doesn't seem possible. And we can see on a TV,
Right.
people on a TV, and now if our parents would, they would never believe. My father would have never believed that it happens. He would say, it's the devil that shows you that.
Yeah.
It's the devil that
Was he a very religious man, your father?
Quite.
all the people were.
All the people were.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were. They
Yeah.
were.
Yes, they were.
Yes, they were very
The
religious.
people in town too.
They got drunk once in a while, but they were very religious.
What about the winters? Now, during the winter, they obviously couldn't farm.
They cut ice. The boys
What did the men do during the winters?
They cut ice.
They cut ice.
They cut ice, and
So
people
then-
used to pack ice because we didn't have electricity, and they had to keep things cool. So they had big ice house, and
Who had
they
a big ice house?
everybody
Everybody had like a garage that was an ice
built
house.
Yeah.
house like a garage
They
and
packed the
filled it
ice
in
with-
with ice, and they covered it up with
With dirt.
sawdust.
Well, with
Sawdust.
sawdust.
Yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
and there was plenty sawdust.
And you kept your meat in there.
Yes, we did.
Oh, definitely, and the cream and
And how long would that
perishable
last?
things.
Till spring.
It would last till spring.
Yeah, and then sometimes
We had
longer.
ice. We had ice all summer,
You had ice all summer.
all summer,
And
and
and sometime in the fall when it was time to, like this time of the year, we had to take the sawdust out and throw it in the air so it would dry out. And sometime we still had ice in there. They had to throw it out and clean it out and then pack it with new
No
ice and
So
cover it
sometimes the
over
ice
again.
would last the whole year.
Hmm?
The ice would last the whole year.
Well,
Yes,
some,
it did.
Some people
It
that
did.
had the cisterns, they'd fill up
Yeah.
their cisterns with ice
They did.
for the winter, and then
And
they
used
had ice
soft
water
water.
all summer long. They had ice water in their cisterns
For drinking.
under the house.
Wow.
But we didn't have a cistern under our house.
Where did you get your water from?
River,
You
And
brought your
we
water
had
up from the river?
yeah, where the cows were sitting.
You had to carry it up.
Yes.
And then it
And
would be
then-
stored in what, a big bucket?
No, yeah,
And
we
then-
had barrels.
Barrels.
Yeah, and we drank it.
And
from
we
the barrels.
had a spring.
Who went and got the water?
The girls.
The ones that were chased to do it. You didn't go automatically because it was
No.
your duty. You had to sometimes
Mama would
before
say that go get some water. And
fill up the barrel.
And if when we wanted to wash clothes, so we had a spring in the across the river, and there was kind of a bank, and there was this spring, and that was soft water.
It was better
And we
water
used
from
to
the spring. than
carry
from the
that
river.
water home to wash clothes.
How much further did you have to walk for the better water?
Oh, maybe 2-3 blocks.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't far.
It wasn't too far.
No, it wasn't far for the water, but then again,
For us,
we
it
used to
didn't
catch the water from the roofs in the barrels too.
Rainwater.
But those turned kind of green if the water stayed any length of time.
So then you would have buckets outside, and when it rained, you would
Not
change
the bucket, the barrel.
barrels.
Barrels.
You had barrels, open barrels outside.
Yeah.
And they were open all the time, or just when it would rain, you would open them?
No, they were open all the time.
And then that's how you'd collect water.
Yeah, but sometimes it was kind of buggy.
Up on the roofs, you say?
From the roof, the water you caught in the barrels.
So you had like a flat roof?
No, we had
You
a
had-
roof
okay.
this way and then again the other way. One part of the house went like this, and the other part like that, one into the other. It was a pretty house with nice porch.
It was
in the
white?
front.
Was it painted?
It was yellow with white trim. It was very pretty to my eye.
It was yellow with white trim.
Yeah,
You have
it
a
was
front
very
porch.
pretty. That was the
Yeah,
porch, this
like
way and
that.
that way, 2 ways.
And we used to plant green creeping stuff, like
Plants.
yeah, and it would
Vines.
Vines,
cover up,
yes.
the vines would cover it
It was-
up.
it
and
wasn't
it was
bad.
nice.
It wasn't
We
bad.
liked it.
We're used to it, so we thought it was pretty good.
You had rocking chairs on the porch or something?
Not much, no.
No?
No, not chairs. We used
For
to.
summer we did, but for winter we'd cover it up. With boards, it would be boarded in.
How about in the summer, did you have a screen door? What kind of door did you have?
Oh,
Screen
definitely.
and the
A screen door?
Yeah.
So you had to go to the hardware store to get the screens to make the screen door?
My dad.
He
They
did.
used to sell those things,
In town?
lumber yards, They had lumber yards toward, at that time, they were already civilized.
Oh, they were.
I think so.
You mean they had lumber yards?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
they had lumber yards and people had beautiful
But when your father first came to North Dakota, I remember reading that piece of paper, a story about him in the local paper.
Yeah,
And it mentioned that when he first came to the farm, he found Indian, there was an
Oh,
Indian
yeah.
cemetery on the farm or
That
something?
was on our pasture.
And he
across
saw
the river.
Indians in the distance or something?
They came whenever he was fishing, and he'd have a bunch of fish. The Indians would come and ask him to give him some. So he was kind of a little nervous, and he'd give them all the fish just so that they'd go away.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
and they left him alone, he had no trouble.
But they,
No, you know what they had there? That's on the old place.
The old farm.
yeah.
Yeah, there was the house over there, and there was kind of before you got to the river, it was kind of slope going towards the north. And out there was where the Indians had their dancing place.
Reservation, would you call it?
No, not, it was the center of whenever they moved there. They weren't there year round. They didn't stay there for the summer. They were just there for the winter, during the fall of the year when they
They
were hunting
migrated.
for things.
They kind of migrated.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? Were they
I don't-
following the animals?
I don't know.
The buffalo, perhaps?
That I wouldn't know. They must have, because we found buffalo heads, but
Buffalo
There
were
were
already gone by the
bones.
time you were kids.
and
Oh, there wasn't any
There weren't no
buffaloes.
but you
no,
found
there
buffalo
was
bones.
nothing. No.
Would you find a lot of buffalo bones together?
No, not a lot of them, but here and there, because most of the land was already broken. by
It was
the
straight
time
land,
I-
wasn't it, where you lived? Was it
Mhm.
flat land where you lived?
No, it wasn't flat. It was, Well, kind of hilly, kind of rolling, and little streams going through it in the spring. But later on in the summer, the small streams would dry out, so we just had a river going there.
The river never flooded. You never.
No, in
You
the
were-
spring, yes, in the spring you couldn't get no place. You was out there, and you better be prepared with flour and stuff.
You don't remember this?
Because
Oh, this was the old house.
That's the
That's
old
why you don't
place.
remember it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you couldn't get out no place. You couldn't go to church. You couldn't go no place because the whole lower land was covered up
But the
with
house
water.
was on the hill.
The old house.
Both
That-
houses.
yes.
Both houses were on the hill.
The old
Yes.
one was on top of the hill. So was
They
the new
built
one.
the houses on hills on purpose
Yes.
That's right.
in case of the
That's
flood.
right.
Right.
So that's about it. But we used to find, you know, where they got those,
Oh yeah.
where Indians
The
used
Indian-
to shoot with the, what do you
yeah.
call them? Things?
Arrowheads.
The arrowheads.
Used to find arrowheads.
And they were brown, and they were made beautiful, sharp like a needle.
They were.
And we used to find a lot of them, but we found a lot of them, but they were there. You know,
What did you do with them?
think. Left them.
What did you do with them?
Nothing.
To throw them around?
We never
See
saved
no
them.
arrowheads. I only saw stones made of on the cemetery. Stones mark
Indian
different
cemetery?
marks. Indian cemetery.
Mhm.
And we knew
How big
that
would the stone be?
it's just like you'd find in the by the houses, one of those
Little
small-
stone like
yeah.
that.
North Dakota is not a stony place where we
You
were.
gotta look
there
for
were
a
no
stone to
stones.
find one.
Ah.
That's why you'd
Yeah.
find a
You'd walk down the road, there wouldn't be stones on the road?
No, in Minnesota, yes, but North Dakota,
And further,
no.
towards Montana, west of Voss,
Yeah,
Park River,
I don't go
out there, that west, that's stony.
but not by us. There was no stones.
No.
Mm-mm.
And no sand either, no gravel.
So the land
They
was
had
just
to haul
grassy.
it from there.
I want to get back to when your father first came and set up his farm in North Dakota. Grandma was once telling me that he spent the first winter just with his his first wife
Yeah.
in a little room with a cow and a baby. You know about this? Tell me about
That's
that.
supposed to be. That's all I heard. That told
And they
me.
spent the whole winter.
They had the cow had to come for the warmth or she'd have froze, and he didn't have time to build the special houses. So everybody for one winter they lived together in a little house
The children.
made out of. There wasn't children.
There were no children, just the husband and the wife and the
That's
cow.
what they told me.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no. When they moved there, they already had Mary and Francis and
What do you mean?
Stella.
When he first came, there was no Mary and Francis because when they
Didn't-
first came,
He lived in Pennsylvania first, didn't he?
he came from Pennsylvania, and there wasn't time to build anything. He only made one log house. That's what he had to start with. He started with a log house, and there wasn't kids.
A small house, it wasn't a small log house. It was what I was trying to tell you about the kitchen, big kitchen.
That,
It was, now the kitchen wasn't there first. That living room was there. It was just a room like that.
But he didn't have time to build that thing in a big room because when he started.
Okay,
with
how
the-
they did it was this way. The man went from Winona, Minnesota, and a bunch of the men, Julius Reski, father, and there was some kind of Bizeskis, the men went alone when they signed up for the land. They went up there, they had to build something, a shack.
Well, that's
on
what
the
I
place.
heard about that
Okay.
shack.
And they
And there
cut-
had the cow and the people
No, they
and
did-
everybody.
they
in that
didn't
shack.
have that.
That's what they
the cow.
told me.
No.
The whole works had to live
Nope.
that first winter.
They didn't.
Uh-huh.
By the time the women came, they had railroad to Grand Forks. And in Grand Forks, there's where they stopped in Grand Forks. And they hitched out when the women were coming. The men were there first to build those houses, and they had them up. They had no roofs on them. They just had sod. You know, they put sticks like that and cut up sod and covered up that the houses with it. And there is where their women were. Then the women came. About the whole train full of them came to Grand Forks, and everybody had to shuffle for themselves.
How long was this before you were born?
From me?
Yes.
Oh my God, I don't
10 years?
remember that part.
That makes
Well,
sense,
that
because
was
that's been
before
recorded.
my father was
That's not-
married to my mother, and there were 4 kids ahead of me. But this is a story that our dad used to tell.
But this, I was referring to what was in the paper, in the Grafton paper.
They didn't put the right things in it.
I
Somebody
only,
Do you remember that
never
article?
knew,
Yeah.
that never knew the thing.
well, I wasn't here, and I
And
didn't
that I
tell
wasn't
that.
either,
But all I know.
Neither was your mother.
I wasn't
no.
either, but
She was still in
this
Poland.
is what our
Well,
dad
mine, the oldest, like Mrs. Felix Gamrowski, they were almost the same age. With her stepdaughter, the oldest one,
Sure.
and my mother, there
See,
wasn't
the
much
older-
difference.
Our mother was 21 years old when she got married to our father, and his oldest girl was 15.
Right.
You see, they were
So
all
they're-
big girls.
Like
She
almost
was
like
only
sisters.
6 years
Yeah.
older
Yeah.
Yeah.
than the
Instead of
girls.
stepmother.
Yeah, they always,
How did that work out? How did the stepdaughters like their?
they
your-
loved
Just
her.
wonderful.
It
They-
did. It worked out well.
Yes.
When
And
Felix
we
said
kids-
the oldest one got married, you talk enough, now shut up. Time enough for you to take a rest.
I didn't even tell
When,
them.
Well, we got time.
when
Yeah, go on.
Mary was married, she moved in with her husband, and she lived with Felix, moved in with my mother and my father. They lived with them until they got established with their own works. They moved out, then when, I don't know, Mrs. Felix Gershetsky, that is, Frances, got married, she too moved in with mother and her husband and lived with them. And
So when people got married, the oldest kids got married, they often would live at home with their
until they got started.
until they got
When
started
they got started,
for a
then,
year or two or something.
yeah, in the meantime, they made doggone sure, just like your dad did, and Janine,
For what, that they
when
liked to get
Janine,
married?
when Janine got married, she moved in with us
Yeah.
until her house was finished. She lived with us
Right.
for a few months or
Right.
almost a year. And then when your dad got married, he lived with us a little bit until he got his way clear to get into his own
Yeah,
home.
but those people like Felix Komorowski's, he was a bachelor. He was living on the farm before they were married because he was going to marry my mother-in-law.
Your mother.
Yes, Mary Kulas.
I don't know those people.
And I know that. See, I know that from the Kosmatkas.
Oh.
And
That's gossip.
they were going, but they changed the women, you know, and he married my half-sister and this guy, other guy married this Kulas,
Well,
Kosmatka
anyway,
married.
that's how they started with their lives in those
So
places. same
why
as
did
here.
they live with the parents?
They did because they loved it that way, I think. I don't know.
But he was batching already, he had a house.
I know he lived, maybe the mother, maybe the wife didn't want to go in that bachelor's house.
Oh, maybe she did not.
You don't remember this?
No, I
You
wasn't
were gone
born.
already.
She
Oh,
was-
you weren't born yet.
No.
Oh,
And
I
they're arguing about something.
see. This is
Give me 2-3 years yet.
nice.
That's about the picture that we had, you know, I have on the wall with the.
I am not on
Johnny
the
was
picture.
the baby. Johnny was about maybe 3 months when all
Yeah.
of this.
I
was
might have been
happening.
in the picture, but I
You can
didn't show.
see at the time they were all very well dressed and
They were already half civilized by that time.
Half civilized.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, they looked good on the
They
picture.
did. They dressed well and they looked very nice.
Yeah, you would think
But-
they were
But?
on the
Did you say
country.
but?
Yeah. They still had their hard times, you know.
Yeah, even,
It was hard.
Yeah, even
Felix
then.
Komorowski, he started out that he hated farms. And August Mishesky, I don't think that he ever moved in because,
These are your
August?
stepbrothers.
yeah,
Through the winter.
stepsisters.
Stepsisters?
He,
Yeah.
through the whole winter, he was with us.
Oh, then he
And
lived.
that I remember because Agnes is as old as Teddy, and I was a big girl. I was at least 6 years old.
I was 2.
9 maybe.
I was 2 years. I don't remember.
No, you wouldn't remember. I do.
No.
I remember.
But I know that they used.
Well, you must be 10. How much older are you than Auntie Teddy?
How much older?
Yeah.
Even 2 years.
2 years. So then you're 10 years older than Auntie Teddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't remember most of those kind of things further back.
So
because-
Auntie Teddy was the last child then.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why weren't there
Right.
any more?
She was.
Do you think that the time things don't give out?
They used to sit on her lap when
I did.
She did.
they, you used to babysit her.
Baby said she
Change her
had.
diapers.
Absolutely.
And you know what color they were? Gray.
The diapers were gray.
Yeah.
Who did the laundry
Gray
back then?
big. Everybody, whoever had a little strength.
Big
All
enough
those
that
women.
could do it.
How did you do it in the wintertime?
Never the men.
Hung it outside and let it freeze out.
You hung it outside and let it freeze.
After wash.
And then what would you do? Bring it in and dry it? No.
Sure, you took them out, and they dry eventually.
In the ice?
Eventually, they dry out.
The
frost would
the
take-
frost would eat it up.
Would take the water out.
It would tear them sometimes by moving them when
If
it
it's
was
windy.
frosted very heavy.
But if it was an icy cold day in the middle of February, you would still hang the clothes up outside?
Sure.
Yes.
You would? In the snow?
Yes.
Sure.
No,
Well, you dress for it, you know. You'd have some kind of boots.
I know you were dressed for it, but the clothes are hanging in the wet falling snow?
Oh, they weren't. Nobody's wearing them. They were
That's true.
hanging out there.
Yeah.
We had other tools.
I thought maybe you would hang them inside,
We didn't have room enough.
there
to-
was no room in
up across the ceiling or so. How high was the ceiling?
Well, after we had the new house, then it was like here.
Like here.
Yeah, just 8.5, 9 feet.
So you couldn't hang them up
No,
inside?
Yes,
much.
we
There
had
was-
clotheslines once in a while, and we'd bring in that heavy underwears that the men used to wear.
Men wore
and
heavy underwear?
They were like that, you know, they were standing up. They were frozen because they were the fleece lines, you know.
Uh-huh.
And we'd bring them up, and we'd
It's okay.
throw them. They kind of melted a little bit, so we throw them over the clotheslines in the house. We made clotheslines in the house.
You wore specially lined clothes?
Yeah, we had to.
You
It
did?
freeze to
Oh,
death.
yeah.
When you
Yeah.
go outside, you had to have fleece lined
And you bought
clothes.
material in town?
For school, we used to wear those long fleece underwears and rubbers.
Did you wear a dress to school?
Yes, we had to
Nobody
wear
All-
wore
all
pants
girls
at
wore
the
pants.
time.
No, we had to wear
Oh.
dresses. We wore fleece line under, and we didn't have shoes.
You didn't have shoes.
No, we had rubbers.
Rubbers.
Heavy rubbers up to here, maybe 5 buckles.
Yeah.
That
And you bought those in town?
huh?
Those were bought.
Those were bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
but,
wore those.
But the stockings were not bought.
My mother made stockings for
She
the
knitted.
whole family.
She
She'd
knitted.
buy a bunch of wool and we carded the wool. She spun the wool and she made the socks for
and the
everybody.
mittens and the caps and everything.
She knitted for the whole tribe.
She did.
Yeah.
And did the older sisters learn how to knit as they got older too?
Some of them
We
did
never-
and some of them didn't.
No?
No, like now Janine knits very good. She's a very good knitter. But Clara
None of us-
never knitted. Emilia
Can you
never
sew?
knitted.
Are you a good seamstress?
Well,
She
I did
sews
sew
good.
for people.
There you go.
For
She
hire.
sews good.
And grandma can sew.
Yes,
That's
all of
good.
us did.
You all could sew. You all learned how to sew.
We
Yes.
all learned
We
to
had
sew
to-
without no instructions.
Without learning from anybody. We
What kind
never.
of a sewing machine?
What kind of sewing machine? I have a Pfaff and a Singer, and
No, I mean,
I like it the
Back
best.
then, there were no sewing machines.
Singer sewing
There were
machine
Singers.
always
With a
was.
foot pedal.
Singer
Before
was.
we were. and you did it. You went with
Foot
your
pedal,
feet,
yeah.
foot pedal, and those were good sewing machines too.
So your mom had a Singer sewing machine in the house.
Mom
Yes,
had a
absolutely.
Singer sewing machine when I was born, and I had Singers.
Me
Now
too.
I have Pfaff. I think it's ever so much better than a Singer, but I like the Pfaff better. It's heavier and it does
you-
better job.
You still sew, Auntie Helen?
Helen sews like a trooper.
You still
Yeah,
sew?
I used to sew, and I still do some, but I can't see that good. It's kind of hard for me to thread the
Thread the needle. Yeah.
But I can do it.
They have some kind
I can do
of
it.
device
I
where
do.
it'll thread the needle for you, don't they?
No,
That wire,
Mine
but that
does.
doesn't work.
Oh,
so
see, they
well.
have something.
no,
It doesn't
I
work
don't
so
think you
well.
have to find that hole in that needle regardless.
You gotta find.
Whether if you use the instrument or you use the thread,
Okay.
you gotta find that where to put the thread.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to your
So-
mother. We were talking at lunch about her being educated. She could read.
She could read and wrote. She had a beautiful handwriting.
Polish
Beautiful.
and German.
Polish and German she could read and write.
Yeah.
The whole family.
And your father could read?
No, he never went to school one day in his life.
He never read, no newspapers.
No, he listened to mother read for him. Always.
Was there a newspaper in town?
Mother had different newspapers that she used to read, stories in different papers and different papers.
How did they keep up on current events,
She
like
read the Courier Polski, and it told her all
McKinley
kinds
being assassinated or something like that?
And the Chicago, they had this newspaper.
Teddy
Polish, of
Roosevelt.
course,
There was
from
one.
Chicago, and
Mine was from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Do you remember hearing about Teddy Roosevelt when you were a little girl, Auntie Helen?
yeah,
Do you remember that?
of course I
Yeah.
remember.
Was that in the newspapers? Somebody would read a
Always,
newspaper?
yes, and my mother used to sit down and she'd read it aloud, and all of us would listen. And
You used to listen to her read
I used to
newspapers.
enjoy listening to her read Soviet stories and different kind
Your
of
mother
stuff.
read to you at night?
To everybody under one light in the kitchen. There was no other lights, so you had to either sit
What kind
or
of
down.
lamp was it?
One little
kerosene
lamp, kerosene
Kerosene.
lamp.
So you
and
had
she-
one kerosene lamp.
Yes, and she read everybody in the kitchen. Mama is reading, whether if you want to or not.
So you had to be
Father-
quiet.
No, you didn't.
While she
Father
read.
made the girls darn socks
Uh-huh.
and do something with your hands. Don't just sit there.
Uh-huh. And
we
the
were
boys?
never
And the boys?
allowed to sit.
Boys could
Not
whistle a
at-
Yankee Doodle. They didn't care, but the girls had to do something with their hands and work, knit, fix dresses, hem things.
All by the
by
light of
hand.
that one little lamp.
Yes.
Yeah. Was it it wasn't in the air, it was on the table.
No, it was not on the table. It
On
was
the
on the
wall.
wall with
On the wall.
blender behind that shut the light as it.
Oh, it kind of pushed the light all around the room.
Yeah, it had
Reflected
sort
the
of
light.
reflection
Uh-huh.
on it.
Did all the
and stuff.
houses have one lamp like that?
Everybody
In the
had it.
kitchen.
In the
Everybody
kitchen.
had it like
Where you
that.
worked, where you stayed, did they have one lamp?
Where you stayed.
Where Auntie Helen, when she was 11 or 12, went out to work?
They all had the same stuff.
They all had the
Everybody
same
had
thing?
the same thing. Now towards last, we got different lamps. We got gasoline lamps, and we pump it up, and they had mantles on it, just
Sure.
one mantle,
Yeah.
but that was a beautiful light. It was kind of blue-white light, and it was gorgeous.
You pumped
It
it
was
up with air.
lighter than here now.
So if their lamp was in one room, and then in the bedroom, there would be no light. in the
There
bedroom.
is no lights in there.
Right.
We used matches wherever we went in
Yeah.
other rooms. We'd strike a match.
Well, what about fire? Did anything ever catch on fire?
We were careful enough because we were afraid of fire.
I imagine. No fire
We
departments.
were
No fire insurance
No
either.
fire
hey?
insurance. No insurance at all.
There was no insurances.
Well, and so this one lamp would light up that one room.
And everybody would gather
If-
or do their work while your mother read.
That's right. But that was improvement already to the kerosene light, So that was so much better.
And your mother never taught your father how to read. He never wanted to learn.
Well, maybe he didn't want to because he relied on her doing the job.
He really
And
didn't
she
have to.
did a beautiful job in reading, and she did a beautiful job in taking care how many bushels to an acre to sow in the spring, and she figured out exactly how many.
Oh, she did the mathematics.
She did everything, the mathematics and texting and everything. She
But
was
she-
the businesswoman.
But she had to figure out of a book. You know, they used to get, you sell so many bushels of wheat for so and so much, and you get so and so much
Right.
for it. Now, my father didn't need that.
Uh-huh.
He figured it out in his head,
Uh-huh.
and he could figure out when he sold a load of wheat, it would have so many bushels, he had to get so much money for it. And he figured it all out in his head.
Yeah.
He didn't have no pencil or nothing, because he couldn't read anyway in a book. So he figured out, he knew it.
So your mother didn't teach you how to read when you were younger?
No,
No.
we didn't even teach us when we went to catechism. At least she didn't me. I don't know about other people.
Well, mother
But
wasn't
she
pushing.
didn't. She never
didn't
taught.
push.
No, she
No.
never checked us.
And us
with
who-
Polish reading, and we never took Polish reading. And to catechism, we had to learn to read Polish in the books and answer everything in Polish, say the prayers in Polish. She never once sat down with us and say, now you learned that page, or what page are you on, and
She
how
never
much.
did that.
Never
And your
did
father
that.
never did that.
No way. You are strictly
You're on your
on
own.
your
We
own.
pushed ourselves, or we didn't know how.
And if they asked you, like
So, all of us read and write.
when they were in
All
the
of us
catechism, they would ask. Now, 1 out of 10, they'd point a finger, stand up and do it. Well, you'd stand up there. If you didn't know it, you'd be very ashamed of yourself. The rest of the kids would laugh at you. So you made doggone sure that you knew before you made that trip to that 5.5 miles, you had to know your lessons.
5.5 miles to catechism?
Yes.
So, you know,
And we walked
Once a
Yes.
week?
Once a week.
Saturdays.
Once a
so
week.
Monday through Friday you would go to school,
Yes, and
Or you would go
Saturday
to
we
work.
go to catechism.
Yeah.
and then on Saturday you'd have to go to catechism.
Yes.
Even further.
Even
Even further.
That's
even
right.
further.
And who
I
taught
used
you
to-
catechism?
The priest.
There were no sisters?
No
nuns?
sisters, there were no nuns, there was nothing.
Mhm, just Polish priests.
Just a Polish one priest. Sometimes when he was
Was only one
lazy,
priest?
yeah, he'd say, one of the bigger boys, he'd say, now you ask a few questions here and there for me. And he'd kind of point, he'd say, where was your mother born? Or where was this or that? And they'd come up, boys and funny, bigger ones, they'd come up with funny answers and make funny jokes. But the priest would ask, they would answer properly. They never made jokes with the priest. We were all scared of him.
Sure, yeah, I can imagine.
He was tough. He'd hit you.
He'd hit you.
He'd hit you. He
Yeah.
was tough. But it was a little bit rough. But
And as
you
we were
can do
saying
it.
at lunch, Auntie Helen was saying that things are different now, according to the way parents today raise their children, the way they are supposed to speak to children. And in the old days, if you didn't do it by the, what was it, the second or the third time it was mentioned, you would get a
slap on the wrist.
or a slap on the wrist, or on the butt. Was your mother and your father, or
My father never hit me in
He
his
never
life.
did. He never.
That was your
He
mother.
had very sharp eyes, and if
He just
something
looked
you
at us.
did he
did,
hit the boys?
No,
he never
never.
hit
Not one.
So he
nobody.
never hit anybody.
Nobody. My
Never.
father never hit.
But my mother did.
nobody.
How tall was he?
We got
He
whipped.
was about 5'11",
He was 5'11".
I think.
You didn't know our brother Mike, did you?
Yes, I knew Uncle Mike.
He was the picture of our dad.
Mm-hmm.
Mike was
So
about
you've got-
5 feet.
Was he
11.
5'11"?
Yeah,
He
he
was-
wasn't 6-footer, no.
No.
But a little bit taller than I am.
Yeah, okay.
And I was
And he never hit
5'5".
anybody.
No.
My father never hit nobody.
Never. He told us, and he told us stories, different stories. He talked to us.
You were about to say that he had sharp eyes.
Yes, he did. He, when he'd look at you, he had such a piercing blue eyes that if you did something wrong, you hated that eye to look at you. Because that would go right through your heart. You think you're dying because you couldn't stand that eye.
His eyes were the color of inside of that bowl over there on the table. The inside,
Yeah. I
just
see.
like that.
Yeah.
And all he had to do is look at you, and you listened.
Well, but your mother, though, she would give you a swat.
Oh,
She wouldn't give you a swat. She'd beat you up good.
She beat you up good.
One time, I went in the what you call it, in the pantry. We didn't have cupboards. We had pantry. I goes in the cupboard, and there I was kind of short, and I got underneath the shelf, and somehow the shelf unbalanced. A big pot of milk came on top of my head. You know, I came out of that pantry. I didn't do nothing. Here I got the best beating of my life because I spilled a star of milk on top of my head, which I didn't. The milk did it itself.
Yeah, but you should have been careful.
My children tell me the same thing, Grandma.
Yeah, how about that?
I didn't do it.
No, I
No,
didn't do
it
it.
did itself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, sure they do that. We used to do that.
Now, how about your older sisters? Would they give you a little swat if you didn't listen to them?
No,
when
they
were,
didn't dare.
When they
No,
were
they
babysitting you,
didn't
like
dare.
maybe
No,
your
they
sister
didn't
Helen?
dare. They
No?
didn't dare. We'd run away from them, and we kept out of their reach.
It was the only mother that had the authority to do that, to
The
punish
kids
the
didn't hit kids.
No, we didn't.
We didn't.
The bigger kids didn't hit each other
Did the neighbors visit neighbors and
Very much so.
all the
that.
time.
Uh-huh.
Very much.
Especially during winter,
yeah,
they'd be over evenings, you know, and
come over during the evening
That's
on their
right.
horse or their sled or something?
after they got a little bit bigger, not little kids didn't go, no.
Yeah, but
they
they would
just
come over and
went
visit
with
your mother
parents.
and your father and
Yeah,
Well, they used to have a lot of things going, like before Christmas, there would be a bunch of, such as Santa Clauses, they used to call them. They'd come from house to house, and they'd wear masks, and they'd knock on the doors. They'd come as far as the neighborhood with a big bobsleigh and horses with jingles on it when Santa Clauses are coming, and we kids
You
were
didn't
so
go, did
scared.
you?
No, I didn't. I was
I
too
did.
scared of them. I couldn't go. If I'd see another one of those ugly
Go where, on the
things,
sled?
they'd
go
come
for
into.
the Santa Clauses.
No, I didn't
Clara
Clara
and Amelia and I and other three girls and the boys, our brothers, and those girls' brothers. We'd go from house to house, and it was fun.
And what would you do from house to house?
They
We'd
sing
go
songs.
in and we had
You
an
what?
accordion
They sing.
playing, and
Somebody played the
we'd
accordion.
sing songs.
Did you do this?
No, I didn't.
She never. She
No, I was too young to
They
do that.
already
They used to
broke
come
up.
into your house though and sing the song.
They went to everybody's house.
Uh-huh.
Everybody's house. They'd knock on the door, and they'd sing, and they'd make kind of tricks, and they'd laugh, and they'd sing holy songs, though. It was all
Polish
carols.
Christmas songs.
Polish.
Mostly all Polish songs,
Right.
carols. They went carols.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at Christmas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at Christmas.
And
Would you get Christmas presents at Christmas time?
of course, everybody did. Just
Everybody?
like yeah.
Just like now.
The parents used to buy for the kids.
And the kids
you know,
would
things.
get something for their...
But not too much, not as much as they get nowadays, but each child got something
Uh-huh.
for Christmas.
Do you remember any Christmas presents that you got?
Christmas presents
Yeah.
that I got.
Yeah.
Well, I got once, my brother went to some kind of a town where my stepsister, or however you call her, was. Well, he came back with each one a doll for each one of us girls.
4 girls.
But the dolls were sitting on the chairs. When we got up, by each doll there was a little bit of candy and a little bit of peanuts and an orange and an apple. And that was your stuff that you got for Christmas, your loot. And then after the Christmas was over, there was a big shelf came up on the wall. And the dolls were lined up on the shelf. You could look at it, but you don't touch it. That's your Christmas
That was your Christmas present.
The only time the doll came down is when company came, and the kids would want that doll, and they'd howl so that Grandpa would get up there and he'd get the doll down, and God, I hated it.
Somebody else would be playing with your doll.
Yeah, and take off her shoes and drop them on the floor, which would break your heart.
Yeah. And I'm sure you complained about it.
Oh no, it didn't help.
Oh, it didn't help.
No, you didn't complain. You just howled and tears came. And then the doll went back up in its own place. The dolls were, you knew which dolls was yours, but you didn't dare touch them.
But you got to eat the candy though.
The candy we ate, the banana we ate, and the rest.
Bananas? You used to have bananas?
We had everything.
Same fruit and food that we have now?
Yes.
Yeah, oranges?
The food,
Yes.
In season.
And we had better food.
Wow.
Because
Better food?
Yes. Because we used to buy apples by the barrel.
Yeah.
Our father did. And they'd get 2-3 barrels of apples, put them in a cellar, and in the evening somebody go and get some apples, and we'd have a snack before going to bed. Everybody had an apple. And
A barrel full of apples would last you all winter or something.
Yes, they did. Yeah. We had apples all the time, and we used to get. They were cheap. Apples were cheap at that time. Of course, I don't know how expensive money was. I don't know that. But we could buy for $2 a barrel of apples. You know, barrel that big and.
Yeah.
Felix Kosmatka with my brother-in-law would come into town with a whole carload of apples. And then, of course, like for Grandpa, he would give it for free sometimes, or very reasonable. But he never came with one box. He'd bring a whole carload. And then everybody that I
He
know
was
used to
selling
pick him
apples,
up.
you know, like that. He used to come by,
With a
got them
carload.
shipped. Yeah, with carload. Different kinds of, and carloads, you know how big those freight cars are?
Sure.
They
Yeah.
bring a full
Full.
carload.
Really?
Yes, and
Of apples.
he'd have it sold in about 3 days. And there you are. He used to deliver apples like that every year for years that I
Christmas,
remember.
yeah, he used to enjoy that.
And so that kind of stuff we had. You know, food we had all the time.
Did you have, Grandma's mentioned before, vendors or sellers who come into an area and sell? Specifically, Grandma mentioned gypsies who came into the neighborhood.
Those were Arabic ladies.
Didn't have gypsies,
What were they?
but not gypsies.
You told me something about
Gypsies
they walked
came with-
across the fields, they
That-
walked from farm to
That
farm.
was Arabics.
Arabs.
Arabian.
Yeah.
And what
The
were they doing in
gypsies
your
came
neighborhood?
with selling material.
They brought in, they used to walk. A man alone would come in with bundles of clothes. You know, all kinds of
Bundles
clothes,
of clothes.
shirts.
Yeah, and they'd carry
Yardage
those things on the
material.
back and in both hands.
All bundled down. They would walk into up to
Right.
your farm
Miles they'd walk with that
They
stuff.
used to walk for miles.
just by themselves.
By one person, yeah.
And they used to stop at our place many times overnight.
But the
You would let people stay overnight at your place?
Yes, they did.
Anybody who was passing through?
Not everybody.
If it came evening,
If
yes.
somebody came up to your house
Yes,
at night,
they
knocked
did.
on the door, they could stay at night.
Yes.
Yes, they could.
Yes.
You would
They-
feed them.
They'd
Yes.
find them a bed somewhere, maybe
Give them
in
a
the
bed.
attic,
Yeah.
but there was always a bed
That
for
never turned anybody
Never.
away from our door.
Nobody was turned away.
Nobody. Never, never, never.
I remember one time, it was during winter and it was so cold, and we had a surprise party at our house. Maybe you remember that. And here comes that boy with those bundles on his back, a real young man. And he was so tired and so hungry, and there's a house full of people. All the neighbors were at our house. And so my brother Lawrence comes out, the dogs were barking, so he comes out to see who else is coming. And here comes that man. So he brings them in the house, and he said, well, here's Arabian, and he's going to stay with us. All right, so everybody looks at him. And, you know, he made him stay, and Of course, we were in one part of the house, the whole bunch. He takes them in a kitchen. My mother fixed them up with stuff to eat because he was hungry. He sat there and he cried. He was almost frozen. And so my brother Lawrence goes and takes his...
This is the winter time.
That was winter, yeah.
They came
just
across
before,
it in the winter time too.
Yes, they did.
My.
And he took him out, took his bundles upstairs, and he says, "Now you're going to sleep here in this room. That's your place to sleep." But he says, "You've got to come downstairs. The rest of the people got to see you." So he took him, and he was showing us how they do dances in.
Do you remember this, Grandma?
No.
You don't remember that?
Okay.
Well, okay. Maybe you don't.
Did you buy anything from him?
Of course, but not that. Not at that time.
Materials.
There were too many people,
Oh.
and you didn't. You never knew. They had beer in there, and some of them probably were pretty well lit up, and you never know what.
Was there a lot of drinking back then?
There were some.
Yeah.
He went to bed, and we had our dance.
People made their own beer?
No, we didn't. They used to buy a keg of beer, and they had a party.
So did these people have really good material, these Arabs that would come through?
Yes, they did.
Beautiful
The
stuff.
yardage was good.
Beautiful stuff.
But
Expensive?
he usually came
I
from...
always thought it was very pretty because they have such tablecloths with tassels and pretty embroidered stuff. Very bright and Arabic stuff.
But
Like
didn't you tell me something about gypsy women or
Well,
something?
the gypsies used to come with a bunch of horses through, and then they'd all run to your house and they'd steal chickens.
Wait.
And,
They would just run in and steal chickens?
yes! And,
Well, wouldn't you see them coming?
But they
Yes.
never came to our house.
yes, they did. When I was living, you wasn't even there.
You were already gone?
Yeah, they'd run in the house and steal the chickens and beat it back. There was a wagon coming with the behind, and the horses.
They would
came
send the
first.
kids in to steal chickens?
And the women.
The women would
The
run up
women
to your
and
farm
the
and steal
kids,
chickens?
Absolutely.
Did you have a gun? You must have had a gun.
We never shot anybody.
But you had a gun.
We had guns,
Yeah.
but we only.
We had not one. We usually had 3, 4
We
of them
had guns.
standing
Shotguns.
right by the door.
Rifles or
in
something?
the corner.
Yeah.
Not rifles.
Shotguns.
22, yes, but not any bigger.
22s.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And 22 rifles,
Yeah.
yes, and shotguns
Uh-huh.
of every kind.
So did your mother shoot a gun?
No,
No?
I didn't see her shoot.
I did.
You saw her shoot a gun?
I
I shot
I
out
shot
of 22.
with it.
I
I
shot,
know how
but
to
I never seen Ma shoot the gun.
Did your mother ever shoot?
No.
So your mother could have
She
shot.
never handled
When
guns.
the gypsy kids came running up to the house, your mother could have shot the gun over their heads to chase them away?
She didn't.
She let them take the
didn't.
chickens.
Well, God Almighty, before she'd wink and blink, they were all gone.
Wasn't there a
They
lot
were
of
so
noise and
quiet.
everybody yelling and
And why? No, they didn't.
so they were quiet?
No, the horses went by and they were drove by and it was such a hush-push fest.
They just grabbed it and ran.
They grabbed it and ran, like you seen in the pictures, honest.
I don't know.
You didn't see it in the pictures.
They didn't steal children though, did they?
No, they didn't steal the children. We didn't
Maybe
give our
the farmers
kids
would have been
gypsy.
very happy to lose few.
I think so.
Well, don't you think?
Did every other farms have as many kids as your family had?
You
As
should
much
look,
anymore.
Because I know Grandpa's had just as many, right?
you should look at the county book.
Uh-huh.
Then you'd find out the Irish had just as big family, and the Scotch, and the Germans. They all had big
They all
families.
had big
They had to
families.
have big families because they were trying to settle down the country.
To
Now
work the
they are
farm.
overloaded.
Yeah.
So they go to the cities.
So they go to the cities. And there's-
Right.
Yeah.
They don't, there are hardly any small farmers anymore.
That's right.
There
Yeah.
aren't any.
That's right.
So the buildings are standing there empty. So,
So, where were we? Oh, yeah, okay. So then, Grandma, did you go straight to first grade then? You just started first grade when you
I
were
started first. And
when you
I-
were about 6?
About
Had to
that.
be.
Had to be
until-
already
yeah.
at that time.
had to be
And then
six.
stopped when I was before the 8th grade. I was about 7th when I stopped.
Okay, so you from the time you were
Didn't you go through the whole school?
No, I didn't have time.
Oh,
so you went to school from when you were 6 to when you were 13.
Till I was 13 because my parents was kind of planning on selling and moving into town.
So during those years, you went 5 days a week to school? Every day?
Sure, we went every day practically. There was some days
in the winter time when it was, like a blizzard or something?
We went.
You would still go?
Yeah,
and everybody would
sometimes we got a ride.
It was 3 miles to school.
Yes.
And you would have to walk.
And we cried when we got to school because our feet were
you didn't carry books home or anything to do?
They didn't give us books to carry.
There were no books to
Never.
carry home.
they belonged to the school.
But there was people that took the wagon and or buggy or sled, and they drove their children. Sometimes we got to ride with the Madre
Did your dad
kids.
drive you to school?
Dad was too old. He
Too
was
old by this
30.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, he was old.
But the boys could have, but you know.
What about the boys? Did they go to school? They were older. They didn't have to go to
It was
school.
cold out there.
They didn't want to.
They didn't
They
like
didn't
to.
want to.
Well, yeah. But they didn't go to school, did they?
They did. Mike was in 4th grade when he quit, and
Fourth
he went.
grade.
Yeah, when he was still going to school when I was going to school. But when he once quit, he wouldn't bother with the reading that was for the girls, and he just let it all.
So then, when you were in 7th grade, you quit to go to work. So that would make you 13 or so. 13.
Yes, I was.
You were
about that.
21 by that time.
Yeah.
So when she was in 7th grade, quitting, where did you quit to go to work?
Well, I went to the farm and I had to take
A
care
neighbor's
of
farm?
a lady. Yeah, to Osowski's and take care of the mother was having a baby and she had 3 other kids. And
Did
we
you
had
want
to
to quit
have help.
school and go to work? Were you
I hadn't much choice.
And who got the money? Did your parents got all the money that you made?
No.
You kept the money.
At first I gave them some money that I've made, but when I got a little bit older,
You stayed in that house?
I stayed in that
The
house
Osowskis?
at Osowski's.
Uh-huh.
And I took care of the mother while she was having the baby and took care of her in bed as a nurse. Did cooking for the family, and they had 2 hired men and milked 2 cows thrown in for good measure.
2 hired men, 2 cows, any other children?
And cook for everybody, yes.
And a husband.
And a husband.
Uh-huh.
And baked bread and everything.
You had to do all that.
Baked everything.
And they paid you money for that.
Yes. And the mom
About
wanted the money.
$3 a week.
$3 a week?
Yeah, wasn't that a bunch?
Uh-huh.
Oh dear.
And what were you doing at that time? You were already 20,
I was already
21.
married.
You were already married. And
Because we moved, I got married at the same year that our folks moved into town.
okay, then when did your folks move? After you quit school?
Oh yes. After I was already smarter then. I needed my teeth to be fixed because I liked pretty teeth and my teeth was hurting. And so I went to,
Was your appendix still hurting then?
yes,
It still was.
It's
All the way up
still-
till you were an adult.
yes.
Yeah.
It was till Janine was 16 years old until my appendicitis busted.
All the way
And-
from when? From when you were a
Since
little
I was
baby?
born,
All the way up
yes,
till
yes.
Janine was 16.
Yes, and
Now-
then I went to, couldn't turn over or nothing in bed, and I went to the doctors, and he says, you got problems here, and he went and he dialed the phone, and he made arrangements for a bed. Dr. Silverman's hospital, that's where Ronnie is working now. And he says, I says, oh, you're putting somebody to the hospital. And he says, you're going into the hospital today.
Hamtramck.
And by the time I went to the hospital, I was a pretty sick person.
How about back in the town when you were growing up? Did they have a doctor in town?
They had doctor, but I wouldn't go to the doctor. I was ashamed.
And what was
He'd
his
ask
name?
me questions. I don't know. When I went in,
You were
up there was some kind of Evans or
You
somebody.
were embarrassed that he would ask you questions?
Yeah, and I
And
wouldn't.
Dr. O'Keefe too.
I wouldn't.
Well,
answer.
there was more than one doctor.
My mother never took me to the doctor. Honest, she
Yeah.
didn't.
They took you to the doctor. Well, that's good.
We had to make it or give up.
Make it or break it.
But
right.
we usually just made it, but it wasn't.
So you went in when you were 13, that would be 1915. Already the war was almost ready to break out. And you went to work at the neighbor's farm. And then when did your father decide to sell the farm?
My father decided to sell the farm when I was at
He
Tabatowski.
didn't sell.
He didn't
He
sell.
just gave it to the boys.
He gave it to the sons.
To the
I don't know
sons.
what he did.
Which son?
And we were supposed to get, each girl was supposed to, they were supposed to pay us off. Give us, each one of us $500. But it never came to it because then came the hard
Revolution.
times, you know,
Yeah.
and they lost everything. The boys lost everything and we got nothing.
Okay, so you were already married,
Yes.
and you were living
She
at
was-
the neighbors.
No, when I got older, I decided to work in a city, and I worked for a Jewish family in Grafton. And
In
after
town.
they
Is that the same town your father moved into?
no, Grafton was the biggest.
How far away?
Next to Grand Forks, it was next biggest.
How far away from where your father moved?
Where my father lived.
10
about
miles.
10
10
miles,
miles.
yeah.
So you moved 10 miles away
Yeah, so I
and worked for a
north.
Jewish family?
I worked for a Jewish family for quite a while, and then the Jewish family decided to move to Minneapolis, and they wanted me to move with them, and I wouldn't do it because I never was in a big city like that. I was thinking, what am I going to do in a large city?
Uh-huh.
So I decided to get another job, and I worked for a lawyer, and in Grafton, and by that
How
time,
old were you then?
I was about 17 or 16.
17, that would make you
I was
18.
about 16 when my father died.
Okay, so your father died right about that.
Yeah, my
And
father
what were you
died
doing,
when I
Auntie
was
Helen, when your father died?
I was married. I had 2 kids
You had 2
already.
kids? You were living on a farm? Uh-huh.
Right.
And which 2 kids were those did you have?
Marion and David.
Uh-huh. And you were already on the farm at that time?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Do you remember when your father died? How you heard about
Yes,
the
of
news and all
course
that?
I remember.
Yeah.
It was during tragedies in September. He died in
It
September.
was in September.
Yeah, and we were supposed to get a trashers, and I went to town to get the groceries, you know, like for the trashers, you
Which
have to
town?
have more. Minto.
Okay. That's where he
So-
lived.
Yes, he
we
did.
lived 9 miles away
But
from
he had
town,
already moved into
and
town.
they lived
Yeah,
in
he
town.
did live in
Yeah.
Minto.
Right.
And I got there, and my father, well, I had a real nice talk with him, and he was at home alone. Mother
How old was he?
at the neighbors, and we just sat for a little while and talked, and then mother came home, and I went home.
Okay.
Next day, we got a notice that he was dead.
Next day.
He
How
died.
old was he?
83.
83. And that was 1918? 19.
Was that 1980?
How old were you?
I don't remember. I don't
I don't
remember
remember
dates.
either.
I don't remember
Sounds-
numbers and dates.
Okay, but
I don't.
you were working for who at that time, Grandma?
I worked for a lawyer in
No,
Minto.
at that time you were
I worked at
Osaka.
Phillips's. No, I worked at Phillips's.
When that
Yes,
You
I
had
worked
already-
at Phillips's.
So this is already the 3rd person you were working for. You worked at the Tabatowskis, then you worked for the Jewish family, and then you went to work for the lawyer. And that's when your father died.
My father died when I worked at Phillips's, and I lived half a block away from my mother's house.
And your mother was already 60 at that
She
time.
was about
She was
in
about
her
60.
60s, yeah.
Yeah. And then what did she do after he died?
She's remained in the place
Did she
for
live by
a few
herself?
years, yeah, and then
Teddy
she,
was at home yet.
Teddy
She
was still at
going
home.
to high school.
Teddy went to high school.
Yeah.
Ooh.
big
She,
deal.
because then she had a chance to go. She went to school.
Yeah. Were you guys jealous that Teddy got to go to high school and you never did?
I wasn't
She
too
was
happy
lucky to
about
go,
it.
and everybody was happy about
I
it.
wasn't too happy about it.
Everybody was happy about it?
We
I
were.
wasn't.
The rest of us, the
No.
older ones, she wasn't
Grandma was
happy
not
about
happy.
it.
No,
yeah.
We were.
Yeah.
Well, would you be happy if somebody would have told you you can't go to school because you can't finish 8th grade because we have to take care of Teddy and she's younger and she needs to be taken care of.
Take
So
care
you-
of how?
To eat and be dressed, so
Okay,
you
have
gotta
to
go
make
to
some
work.
money. So you have to make some money.
Yeah,
She
so
was
when
only 2
she
years
goes-
younger than you.
2 years.
Right.
So she has to go to high school, and you don't go to high high school because you've got to make money and give me money so that Teddy can have nicer clothes and give me the check because I need it for Teddy.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean she didn't?
She didn't give.
I didn't give Ma the check, so she told me get the hell
Is this
out of
what
the
happened?
house.
Is this what happened?
And I went.
So this is when you went to live with
You
your spouse?
better damn believe it.
Before that, you would come home at night?
No,
She never
I went
came
to
home.
Old
It's like you stayed where you was working.
Oh.
No, I didn't go back.
But this
to
time your
Old
mother told you just don't come back.
When she told me to get out and stay out, I went and hitched a ride to Helen's house.
How far was that?
And
9 miles, you said.
9 miles
Yeah.
from
So
town.
I stayed at her place for a little bit, and then I got myself a little jobs here and there, and then later got a job in Minto, working in the restaurant, and not a big restaurant. It was sort of a
You were a
hole in the
waitress?
ground. I was everything. We baked bread and we waited on customers and we did everything in one of those little towns where they got fast foods.
And you were how old? 19, 18?
I was about 18 maybe.
She was
17,
already
18.
running around with Leo.
You'd already met Leo in Minto. Is that where you met Grandma?
No, I knew Leo because we went to the same church together and we went to...
We knew each
You
other.
knew Grandpa too.
He was...
His family.
He was...
Tabatowski.
Yeah, we all went to the same church and we've seen each other. It was...
You didn't go to the same school.
No,
No.
we did not go to the same school. No. He went to a different school. He went by our old place to the school by the Gersheskis, and we went closer to home.
Did Grandpa in his just to move aside a little bit, did Grandpa and his family, did they speak Polish as well like you did?
Yes, they did. The same
He
thing.
did as well, because I don't remember
Absolutely.
hearing Grandpa speaking Polish very much. Even
He's-
just a phrase or two.
Yeah, we always spoke
To each other?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes. The kids understood it very good, both of them, but they didn't speak because it was...
Did you teach your children
Yes,
Polish?
they still talk.
Evelyn speaks.
David does too. You haven't met David
No,
yet.
no.
He's a municipal judge in a former North Dakota.
Foreman?
I'll tell you how I met your grandpa.
Good.
We were going out. One of my neighbors came over and he had a Vili car, and there was 4 of us going to Oslo. And Leo had a big Dodge. That's your grandpa.
Okay.
He had a big Dodge, and Steve had Vili. Can you figure me getting under the wheel
Uh-huh.
and driving that Vili car out the farms
Uh-huh.
in ditches from here to God knows where?
Yeah, big ditches.
All right.
Yeah.
And Leo was trying to bypass me, and I went as far as that car could go, and be damn if he could get through. He couldn't get through, and he didn't get through.
He was honking his horn at you
He tried to bypass me
Uh-huh.
to show me that he can bypass
in his
me
new car?
in his Vili and in
His
his
Dodge.
Dodge, and that Vili would let. And the people in my car, Teddy, my sister, and somebody, and Steve and I. There was 4 of us. I wouldn't let him by. You know these narrow roads?
Sure.
Uh-huh. I never knew how to drive a car from nothing.
Uh-huh.
But I was in there and he wouldn't.
Isn't that funny? You met him while the first time you saw him, you were driving a car.
No, that's the first time we sort of met.
Uh-huh.
I've seen him, I said hello. So we went into the cafeteria, we had some ice cream, and he comes out there showing up. So you think your Vili is better than your Dodge. You know?
Uh-huh.
I thought it was cute.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of our friendship from
Uh-huh.
there on in.
Auntie Helen, how did you meet your husband?
Me, I don't know. I seem to have known him all my life.
Uh-huh.
I don't
What
know.
did you get?
We just knew each other.
Oh, how pretty you are.
What is that? Cake?
There's just little keys.
Okay. This is good. Looks good.
You just knew everybody from the neighborhood, from the
Yes,
neighboring
we
farms.
did.
And you just married each other and
No,
Yeah.
we didn't marry each other. I went
No,
to St. Cloud, and from St.
oh,
Cloud,
okay, but
your dad, Leo, came to
did
pick
people
me
ever
up.
leave the neighborhood to move to the big city? Any of the brothers or sisters or the neighbors or?
My sister Julia used to live in in Detroit, and Helen came to visit her and stayed and lived here.
She was-
Before I came
Before
here,
I was
Clara and
married.
Amelia were here.
You came to Detroit before you were married?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah?
I was here
So
for...
did
So
Amelia.
Julia was the very
Almost a
first one to
year.
move away?
She was here because her husband's people came from Detroit.
How did she ever meet him?
He lived in North Dakota, but his people came from Detroit.
So Julia came to Detroit because her husband's people came from Detroit.
That's right.
And that's eventually how you ended up in Detroit.
I went first.
You went
I was
first.
here, and I stayed for almost a year, and I was working in a factory.
Where did she live?
And she lived on Norwalk in Hamtramck.
No.
Hamtramck? Yeah. At the other end.
Joseph Campo and Shane, where they meet. They
That's
met-
past
Or
there.
Milwaukee Avenue,
Okay.
there's someplace close by.
That's not there anymore. It's all
And
torn
I
down.
had a wonderful time in Detroit when I was...
It was a big city, eh?
City. You bet your tootin', and I loved it. I went to different things like concerts and different shows and a lot of museums. We enjoyed museums, and I got to know a lot of young people, and we went together.
But you only stayed here a year.
That's right.
Why?
I came back. They wanted me to come back there for in the fall. And when I came back, then I find out that the folks had signed up their farms to the boys,
And we're moving to Minto.
and they're moving to town.
Yeah.
And we had to clean up the house and get them moved to town. That was it.
And then,
And I got married that year.
and then you got
Out
married.
there.
There you go.
Yeah.
So how
So
did
that's
you
the end of it.
how did you get to Detroit? I know that you made some stop in St. Cloud, didn't you?
Leo came to pick me up in St. Cloud.
How did you get to St. Cloud from Minto?
How did I get to St. Cloud? Because Felix, my nephew, my brother-in-law and his wife, my sister, come over and they picked me up, and I worked in their bakery.
You went to work in St. Cloud.
Yeah.
And you left
St.
every...
Cloud, and then Leo came over and picked me up and we drove to Detroit in a little Ford Roadster.
Okay, now how long did you stay in St. Cloud?
About less than a year.
Less than a year. And did Leo come and visit you while you were in St. Cloud?
From Detroit. He was working in Detroit.
He had left already to go to
Yeah,
Detroit.
he
Why
was
did he go to
already-
Detroit?
By boxcar, he ran away from home. His father didn't want him to go. He busted up the father's car and left it in the
The
ditch.
Dodge?
The Dutch.
He busted up the Dodge.
He busted up
He
the
passed one
Dutch.
too many wheelies.
Yeah, he was probably chasing the wheelies. So anyway, he left the car in a ditch, and he took the freight train to Minneapolis.
He jumped on a freight train.
Yeah, and he was shoveling coal for his passage,
For his
working
ride.
on the engine, and he got to Minneapolis. He worked in Minneapolis a little bit, and then he made enough money for a ticket to Detroit, and he took a bus or train. I don't even know what he took.
Why did he come to Detroit? To work in the auto plants?
Ford was opening up, and Ford was offering $5 a day for whomever comes to work for Ford's, get paid $5 a day.
So he
and
came
that
to work
was-
for Ford.
And he came to work for
Everybody
Ford.
did, eh?
And the
Yeah.
first time
From all over the country.
and he walked into Ford's, he got hired in, he walked in one door and he walked out of the other. He refused to work in that shop.
That was it.
Yeah, it wasn't for him.
Why?
He hated large shops. He looked around, he got a different, he worked in two shops.
Did he always hate large shops?
The very first time, yes.
But not later.
He hated big shops.
But not later.
Yes,
But what
he
about
did.
Packard's? Didn't he work at Packard's?
Yes, he liked Packard's.
Didn't he like Packard's?
He liked Packard's very, very much, but he worked at that time in the office at Packard's.
Oh, he worked in the
He was
office.
hiring and firing as a boss.
Because I was
at
told that when Packard's went under, that it
Packard's. He
broke
knew-
his heart.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
It It did. So that's when he went to work at National Broach?
Yeah, he went to beer grinding small shops. He wouldn't go into a big shop.
So
Never.
he went to
Person Bros.
so he went to Detroit and got a job in small shops.
Right. He liked small shops where he was his own boss.
And he knew you were in St. Cloud.
Yeah, he knew I was in St. Cloud. We wrote to each other.
You were writing to each other, so you were having a little romance.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Well, we were romancing.
So then he wrote you and said, I'm going to come and pick you up.
Of course.
And then you said, what day or whatever. And then
He got there.
he came and picked you up and took you back to Detroit.
Right.
And you got married.
Not right away, no.
Didn't get married.
No, for about a year or so. We were married in St. Hyacinth's Church.
St. Hyacinth's Church down on
In Detroit.
McDougal
On
over there.
McDougal, yeah.
Yeah, it's still there.
Świętogwiazdka.
Świętogwiazdka.
Which is what? What does that mean?
Emilia
St.
and
I used to go there.
Emilia and Clara were to our wedding. That's only two people I knew that were to our wedding.
Amelia and Clara were the only two people. The wedding was in Detroit.
A wedding. We didn't have no wedding, especially.
Wasn't Julia in Detroit at that time?
Julia was kind of cooling it because she was kind of angry.
She was angry with you?
Yeah.
But Amelia and Clara had also come up to Detroit.
Oh, they were here ahead of me.
Before you were here.
Before I was, they were.
So at that time, Julia, Amelia, and Clara were already here.
Yeah,
And then you came.
that's
And Auntie
right.
Helen was here and already gone back.
Helen was here, and I believe she was back in North Dakota.
And did any of the other brothers and sisters come to Detroit?
Mike did, yes.
Mike came in and out.
Mike came and he stayed.
Uh-huh.
Mike never went back no place. Once he came to Detroit, he stayed in.
He used to come to visit.
He's at Mount Olivet.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I remember Uncle Mike. So, then you got married. All right, what year was that? What year did you get married,
I
Grandma?
don't remember.
Well, Dad, how long had you been married when Dad was born?
When your dad was born.
Right. How many years?
I don't know, quite a few.
Because he was born in 1928. So you...
We were married 1924.
1924. So how old were you then? Do you remember? Okay, I can add that up. You were 22.
I was married on my 22nd birthday.
And how long after that did you go back and visit North Dakota with Grandpa?
We went first time to visit North Dakota is when Junior, my oldest boy, was what? He was around a year old.
So,
That's the first time we went to visit
and
him.
your mother, did you visit your mother?
Yeah.
Oh, there was a big family by then.
She was by that time married to Fee.
She married again?
Yes.
Okay, when did she marry again?
While I was in Detroit, she married her next door neighbor, and she lived in a different house. And we.
Did you like him?
He was a very nice person.
Did you like him, Auntie Helen?
Yes, we
What
did.
was his name?
We liked him very
Tom
much.
Fee.
Fee. He wasn't Polish?
No, he was Irish.
No, Irish.
He wasn't Polish.
And he didn't even understand.
But she didn't speak English.
So,
She didn't speak too many, but she spoke.
Oh, so they spoke their own language, eh?
No,
Yeah.
she spoke.
they knew each other. They
Oh, okay.
knew how. They
How
knew.
old was he?
He was pretty old. He was older than Dad.
Yeah, he
Wait,
was
he
a
was in
nice
his
guy.
mid-80s?
Oh, they were both old.
No, she was in her 60s then, no? Late 60s?
Something like that, yes. I don't know how old she was when she was married.
Yeah. Did you go to the wedding when she got married to Tom Fee?
No.
You-
We all lived in, we lived in Detroit at the time.
You were living in Detroit then? So you came back to live in Detroit?
Afterwards.
For how long did you
We
come?
lived in Detroit for 5 years. My husband didn't like it.
No.
He liked it better out in the farms. I didn't, but I went.
For how long?
Until we moved to California,
Which was what year?
and I don't know, I couldn't tell you.
Oh, okay.
58, I think it was 1958 when we
So that's about
moved,
30 years you lived on the farms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we moved to California, and we've been there since.
30 years on the farms, 30 years in the city. Yeah.
I should say.
So then you went
Yeah.
back to visit, and your mom had already been married then to this.
Yeah, she was married to Fee, and they were both kind of sitting on the steps when we came over. I came to visit them, and they were
You
sitting
had a
and
baby with
talking.
you. Yeah.
No, I don't believe.
Junior.
In the evening when I came to visit him, I didn't have him with me.
Oh.
And she was sitting on the porch, and I said, hello, Mama was talking, and she looked and she thought she knew me.
But did she know you?
She did. She was so surprised because they were both sitting on the porch.
Oh, you
and
hadn't
the
told her
stove-
that you were coming?
No,
Did they have telephones?
no,
No telephones?
No.
Electricity?
yes,
In Minto?
yes, no,
They lived
no
in town.
phones,
Yeah.
but they
But they had
didn't have
electricity.
no running water or nothing
No
like
running water.
that.
Did you have running water in Detroit when you were in Detroit then?
The running water, yes,
We did.
yes,
Phone? Did you ever phone then?
no.
People didn't have
didn't
phones
have
like that.
phones.
Everybody didn't have phones when we were younger.
Excuse
You
me.
know.
Yeah. Well, when you were on the farm,
Never had a phone.
when did you get the phone?
We never had.
Never had a phone.
Never had it.
All the way up to 1958, we never had a
That's
phone.
right.
And when did you get electricity?
We got electricity about 2 years before we sold our farm.
1956.
Yeah. The REA came out,
Yeah.
so we got it in,
And
and that was nice.
1956. So phones and no phone and no electricity. So life really changed from when you were kids sitting around those little square stoves to when you sold your farm.
Stove wasn't bad at all. The worst was you had to go to the bathroom half a block from the house.
Well, why wasn't it
And
half a block?
that was cold. I tell you, to go to those places, it was misery.
It was a half a block?
Well, they didn't have them right by the house.
Well, I remember the Valenchik's farm. Their outhouse was probably,
But half a block from the
oh, I
house.
would say maybe 100
And do
feet.
you know that nobody
Well,
had a
they-
bathroom?
Okay, but didn't
town.
you use little chamber pots in the middle of the winter?
That's
though?
right.
Yeah.
They didn't have,
Right.
and they took a sponge bath. They didn't
Yeah.
have any bathrooms
Sure.
in the small towns at
Yeah.
the time. Now, yes, all the farmers have running water
Yeah.
and everything.
Uh-huh.
Those farmers that are living out there, they all have running water.
Mhm.
And electricity, naturally, they have that. And it's kind of nice out there now, you know, for the farmers that are living
That
there.
are left. So when you
Yeah.
went back and visited your mother with Junior and Grandpa, you took Junior to see her and all that?
The first time they were kind of mad because the grandpa left the farms and he never wrote to them or anything.
Who left the farms?
Grandpa Leo, their
Okay,
son.
okay, yeah, okay.
And then we had a
He
little
hitched a
boy
ride.
when we came over there, and we gets off the car. We first drove to Minto, and Lida, his sister, says, "This I gotta see when he comes. I want to see what Babusha's going to do."
Uh-huh.
And they're going to,
His mother.
yeah,
How did you get along with his mother?
very wonderful.
You did?
Just great.
Mhm.
Well, anyway, we came.
What was her name?
Babusha?
Yeah. Or
Her
his-
name was Ethel or
okay,
something.
Okay.
Anyway, she said, she says, Lida says, "I'm going to." And Lida was on her knees putting in a linoleum in the cafeteria where I once worked. They owned it at that time. And they drove first to kind of prepare the babusha that we were coming. But we were about, maybe 5 minutes behind them. And we drove in there, and you know, Babusha stands there and she blesses herself. She don't believe it. She don't believe it.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? As mad as they were at that Leo, they embraced him and they kissed him and they just hugged him. And then came little Junior. He was learning to walk. And first thing he does is, boof, he goes over in the mud with his hands and feet. And he's standing there, you know.
Were they
It was
speaking
kind of
English
fun.
to each other or Polish?
Polish.
Grandpa
Everybody-
always spoke Polish to his mother and
Yes.
to his father.
Yes.
Grandpa had a little bit of a temper on him when he was younger.
Oh, who knows? He had to run away and stuff.
And his
Anybody?
father, how was his father to get along with? And what
He
was
was
his
a
name?
ladies' man that always liked to
yes.
pinch the ladies in
Oh,
the
yes.
knees
I
or
remember.
wherever he could get at them, he'd pinch them. And he liked the ladies.
Oh yes. Did you know my grandfather's father? Did you know him?
Jadusz.
Did you know him?
Of course I
You
did.
did.
I liked him. I thought he was a very nice
He
soul.
wasn't pinching your knees.
No, definitely not.
There you go, Grandma. He wasn't.
I go and shake hands with him and spoke nice to him. If you ask, you more or less get what you ask for. You know.
You get what you asked for.
Yes, you do.
If you,
They always
if
were
you
nice.
run into problems.
And I liked her too. I mean,
I always
Leo's
got
mother,
Leo's mother, you knew her.
I loved her. I thought she was a wonderful person. She talked a lot, but I like people that talk.
When did she die? Grandpa's mother.
She died later than our mother did because our mother, she came to see our mother.
I know she.
When before our mother died, she died in, my mother died
when did your
in
mother
my
die?
house.
Your house.
And,
Was she
and
sick?
your grandma
She was sick a long
came
time.
over to visit her.
You came back from Detroit to visit her.
I was taking
No,
helping
she
take
was
care of
taking
her.
care of her.
I left
Helped.
the children and my husband.
You called
and
up
went to
Grandma
take
and said,
care
come
of
home
them.
and help take care of Mom.
I told all of my sisters, for the summer, you're coming to help me take care of Mother, or you take Mother. I already had her for 3 years. And now
Your mother
you
came to
help
live. What
me.
about, what happened to Tom Fee?
Tom just.
He was dead,
He died.
yeah,
Okay.
before that.
And then your mother got sick. And then you
Yes.
took her.
She gave up after.
They were married
after
together
he
for,
died.
How
Mom
long-
gave up.
How long were they married for?
But
they were married 10 years
10 years.
exactly.
10 years.
Yeah.
So.
And then when he died, our mother kind of gave up. And she started to forget things, and she got lost, and she used to live alone and in town, and she'd walk off and things like that. So we had to take her.
Yeah, so you brought her home.
And so I had her at our home, and for 4 years. And the last year, I wrote to the girls and I said, here, you're coming to
And
help
you had
me.
your own children as well.
Oh, they were all gone
They're
except
already
Johnny.
grown and gone.
Johnny
Okay.
was still
in
at
the high school.
Okay.
He was in high school.
So you wrote to the Amelia and Clara
That's
and
right.
Grandma and Julia
And,
too?
and they got together, and I said, you either take her for the summer, or one of you come here and stay and help to take care of her.
And how did that person turn out to be you?
They got together
You were
they
the
with their
youngest.
husbands, and they
Where was Teddy?
all
Teddy
that
went
she
a
was
year
in
before.
Detroit.
Teddy was here in Detroit too?
Yes.
She was a year. She was there before I went.
So they figured,
went
their
home already.
husbands figured
Teddy
that
went
it was
home
time.
and I came.
Okay,
Each one stayed a month
I see.
with me. And just to take care of Mother, because I had the farm work to do, garden to take care, and chickens and everything, whatever you have on a farm, you know.
Yeah.
And, okay, so they stayed, each one, except Amelia. She died before Amelia's turn came.
So then you saw her just before she died then, right? You stayed with
She
her?
died with us, just the
You
two
were
of
there when
us,
she died?
and Johnny.
Oh my.
I lit
Our
up the
brothers.
candle and I said the litany as she was dying.
You did?
Yes, I did.
And you called the priest or?
No, the priest she had before this.
She
all
had a
happened.
priest before then.
And you know, out in the farms, we didn't have a telephone to say, hey, priest,
Yeah,
get
that's
over
true,
here.
that's true. About what year was that?
I forgot. I can't tell you dates.
Was Dad already alive? Did you have any children yet?
She was
Okay.
82
Oh my God,
years old.
yes.
Janine was born?
I was, Janine and Tommy were with Julia, with my sister. I left them here
They
for
helped
months.
each other here
I left
while the mother was out there.
I left there. Leo took the kids home on the way from work. He picked Tommy and Janine and brought them here. Brought them to the house with him. He fed them and clothed them, and he took them to Auntie Julia's place and went to work. And on the way from work, he'd pick them up.
He
to
kept them
see-
at night and fed them, and then in the morning he
Yes.
dropped them at Julia's and picked them up
Yes.
on the way. That
For a
sounds very
whole month.
familiar.
For a whole
Yeah,
month,
uh-huh.
he did that while I was in North Dakota.
So then the kids
Ted-
were probably about
Teddy did
8, or
this.
this was in the 30s, in the 1930s already then.
I don't even remember.
Yeah,